Welcome to episode 90 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts from yesterday's matchup between the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks game that took place in Milwaukee. And so I wanted to talk about some standouts from that game. And Blackhawks, they had a really good matchup and really good game. They won 6-2, played really well, and had some really good standouts. And obviously, we have to talk about Connor Bedard once again and three assists, four shots. And in terms of his game, he was making plays all game long. They reunited him on a line with Philip Kurashev yesterday, and they looked dynamic together because they played all season together, pretty much last year in its entirety together. So they have a lot of experience playing together. They have a lot of experience making passes to each other, not only at 5-on-5, but also the power play. So with Bedard and Kurashev and having that combo, they could very well start the season off together. Blackhawks, they've tried out Bedard with Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi, and it hasn't been a bad line. And you could certainly work that line out together because there's a lot of depth on that line. But at the same time, reuniting him with Kurashev, they showed tremendous chemistry last year. It seems to make sense to put those two back together, at least temporarily, and see where it goes from there. Bedard, obviously elite at making plays. He's elite at finding seams. He's elite at being able to find backdoor plays. He's proactive and he's faster at many other players in the league at being able to make passes and generate passes with volume and efficiency. So with Bedard, he's a step above everybody else in terms of his playmaking ability and his overall offensive play. Another one is Nolan Allen had a really good game. He played in the prospects tournament with Chicago and was the captain for them at that time. Nolan Allen has really stood out the preseason, and he was the last pick a few years ago in the first round, 32nd overall. And with Nolan Allen, he's a steady two-way presence. He's not a super big physical in your face type player, but at the same time, he relies on positioning, angles, and stick work to really shut plays down and keep players outside the dot lane, not only in the neutral zone, but in the offensive zone as well. He's really sound with his stick. He's controlled with his movement. He's controlled with how he uses his upper body to be able to sometimes close space and close players off. And he's really good defensively. He's really good shutting plays down. He's really noticeable in terms of his overall ability. And he was playing a slightly bigger role yesterday because they weren't playing too many of their bigger defensemen. They weren't playing too many of their defensemen that are regular starters in the team in general. So this gave him an opportunity to play, and he played really well. He stood out all across the board. Ryan Donato, 2-point game, four shots. He was really good all across the board. Again, not a player who really stands out in terms of offensive ability, but stands out in terms of his checking game and defensive play and how he's engaged on the forechecking side of things. And since we talked about Bedard, we're going to talk about his line mate, Bill Kurashev. They're paired together on the power play and on 5-on-5. They're absolutely dynamic together. They're making so many good plays together. They're reading off each other really well. They're moving in their space really well. They're able to find seams really well together. And Kurashev's a guy who can really complement Bedard because of their playmaking. And they're both dual threat players. Kurashev's more of a playmaker than he is a goal scorer, but he still has dual threat ability. He can score when necessary. So the ability for him to find narrow seams is really tough. And sometimes it takes a lot out of a player to actually find those seams, but with Kershev, it also seems effortless on his end, which is actually really unique and really rare to find that in a player. So he was really good, especially in terms of checking details as well. Another one's Frank Nazar. Frank Nazar really stood out on the offensive side of the puck in his transition offense and how he was able to use his speed to ignite his attacks. And that's a big part of his game. That's one of the biggest components to his game is his speed and how he can weaponize that. And it's his biggest attribute because he can use speed and tempo in his puck skill. So he can use those two simultaneously to be able to generate offense and be a dual threat player. Colton Dock, another player who stood out and played a majority last year in Rockford, had some injury issues, but he is so good as a power skill type forward. He has a power forward ability, but also small skill ability. So he's a guy who's really coordinated with the puck. He's 6'4", he's really coordinated. He's really good in small areas. He's really good at using body position and puck protection. Really good at controlling the walls, and that's a big vantage point to his game and could allow him to translate to the NHL a little bit better and a little bit more effortlessly his ability to control the walls. with the puck in his stick. Really good all around player and plays a sound two-way game, but offensively, you're going to notice him in terms of his ability to hold off players, hold off contact, and be able to absorb contact with his body and his strength and his core strength as well. Ethan Del Mastro, another player who plays very mature hockey. He is around 6'3" and a defenseman who was an all-star in the AHL last year, and he played so good defensively for Rockford at that time. This year, he looks like he could very well play a lot more games in the NHL. He looks really sound, really composed, really fluid in his movement, not only with the puck but without it, and really steady two-way presence, not only with his size but his actual positioning. And he's so sound and he shuts plays down so effortlessly and he does rarely ever panic. And again, having that first pro season where he was an all-star under his belt, that's going to really allow him to potentially translate to the NHL a little bit easier. And he had some games in with Chicago last year, so it'd be interesting to see if he gets a lot more than that this year. And surely he will. It'll depend on call-up situation and roster moves and the salary cap, stuff like that. Lucas Reichel, another player who stood out a lot, really liked his game because he showed his speed, he showed his skill, and smaller handling skill is a little inconsistent. Sometimes pucks wobbled on him a little bit, but at the same time, he's still trying to get back and find his groove consistently. But he looked really good. He looked like he was making some really good plays. He looked calm. He looked like he was enjoying the offensive side of the game and enjoying how he's attacking. And in terms of his routes, he was really standing out in terms of how he was able to attack with the puck, how he was able to get around defenders and be able to create one-on-one sequences individually. And another player who stood out was similar to the effect of Reichel was Samuel Savoie and played in the QMJHL a few years, and now he's going to be playing pro. And it's going to be interesting to see how his game translates. I would imagine he would be playing in Rockford this year, but he looks like he could very well have a good season in the pros. And he's a pro style player. He competes. He hits everything in sight. That's the thing I noticed about him is he's going to finish his check relentlessly anywhere. And it doesn't matter where he is. He's going to do it consistently and make sure that he does it with a bang and with energy. He's always got that presence, that energy out there when he's on the ice because of his speed and not necessarily because of his offensive flair, but more so on the side of his speed. He's very speedy with the puck. He's very speedy when generating offense. He's very speedy in how he's able to forecheck and generate turnovers and stuff like that. So really stood out, and he was really engaged all across the board in that sense. And he was really noticeable in terms of how he was able to check with efficiency and how he was able to generate that consistently throughout the game as well.